This morning on WFAA, and I think it's such an interesting story. There is a former pastor, his name is Mark Jockel of Arlington, and he has initiated this new thing called Meet Your Neighbor. And I think he's actually doing a Twitter campaign, and it's hashtag Meet One Neighbor. And this is, of course, after the Cleveland kidnapping case, and he's encouraging everybody to go around and meet their neighbors. And isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting?
What's funny?
Knock on their door and see if you can see in their window if there's anything boarded up.
I think it's actually a fantastic idea because, you know, we've lived in our house for a couple months now, and we've only met one neighbor. Yeah. And, you know, shame on us. I feel like when you move, and shame on them too. I think when you move into a new house, and this is what I loved about living in Salt Lake City. Their population there is mostly Mormon religion, and one thing they do really well is make you feel at home. Mm-hmm. I mean, we would move into a new house and we'd have people bringing over casseroles, and you know, it's just really cool.
Yeah, they do, and they do that, and even in Richardson and smaller communities, if they're older generations, they send
something.
Yeah,
you know, just a little something to say hello.
It's always good to have somebody to call to and say, you know, you got some sugar.
That's right.
I have some ketchup I can borrow. I mean, like my neighbor across the street, they're the Devereaux. We're so close with them. Our kids carpool together. We hang out together.
Yeah, that's
and you're
great.
right. Like, I wouldn't want to leave our home ever because of our neighbors. We've got just really special people that we can count on.
That means
the
a
other
lot.
night I was stuck out at the course, and I called and I said, can Elisa come over and watch the babies till I get back home? And she was right there. So you're right. I think there's something about having great neighbors. It's like your family.
It is like your family. It's like your little community.
You don't like your neighbors?
And I think young people are afraid that if they know their neighbors, they're going to be knocking on the door,
Well,
coming
and I think
over all
that's
the
kind of
time.
a little bit of it. Like, I don't really want people to know where I live, and I don't know. I think it's just a thing. Like, then once you introduce yourself, I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. Once you introduce yourself to your neighbor, then they feel like they can just come knock on your door whenever.
Let me tell you
I don't really want
Wait a
people to do that.
The funniest story.
How do you know they're not going to like that? They won't like you. They may not
No,
like
it's
you,
not
so
about
never call you again.
No, but then that's great. But then I just don't. I
then
actually
you'd be saying,
prefer-
my neighbors
no,
don't
I would
like
actually
me.
prefer if they didn't like me because then you have to say hi to them every time you're in the elevator. And you have to have that obligatory conversation. How are you? How are you? How was your weekend? How was your weekend? What are you doing for the week? It's like, I don't really care.
Oh, well, that's so sad.
And maybe that's my whole other thing of that. I don't say thank you when people hold doors open for me, but I just don't really
Okay, you know what? I'm just going to say this. She's actually a really nice person.
No idea.
And she's become one of my closest friends.
And she'd be the
I
main
love
one.
her.
And you know what? She'd be the main one saying, come on over.
No,
Of
like, I
course
was
she
like that in
would.
college. When I lived in a dormitory, like those girls that all wanted to hang out in one person's room, I'm like, this is my room, and you just like walked in.
Well, I think an
and helped
apartment building,
yourself.
an apartment is a different situation than if you're in a home in a neighborhood. And I remember when I was little, my mom knew our neighbor, our next door neighbor. Her name was Mona, and Mona would come down to she would knock on the door every day to come and talk to my mom. She wanted to sit around, she wanted to smoke and talk, and my mom would take me. She'd see her come, and she'd hear the doorbell, and she'd get me, and we'd hide down under the
I
window.
would be that person.
We'd wait for Mona to go away. So I kind of get what you're saying.
Then you get stuck in these conversations with people. Like I was with a friend having dinner a couple weeks ago, and he ran into a friend that lived in his building, and he was like, oh my gosh, she's going to talk to me for hours and hours and hours. And he was like, and you can't get rid of, like, I just get nervous.
I actually thought about having like a little, kind of like a little open house, like do like a chili or barbecue or something and invite all the neighbors. I did that when the kids were little, and Brian and I would moved into a new home, and it was like right around Halloween time. So I had like a Halloween open house where we did, you know, the whole chili and.
Well, the point that this pastor, though, why is he saying get out and meet your neighbors so you can find somebody that you're suspicious of?
Well, I don't know if it's specifically for that. I think his point is. I think his point is that, you know, throughout this whole story in Cleveland, we've heard people say, "I've lived here for a year. I never knew something was going on. I've been here for 5 years. I never knew something was going on." And I think what he's saying is that if you make the effort to get to know your neighbors, then when something suspicious happens, you'll be more aware of it.
Well, I don't know what could be more suspicious than a house that's boarded up and a guy coming out every now and then and no windows and nothing. I don't know what could be more suspicious than that. What could be? I mean, if we
Well,
don't get
I mean,
the-
it depends on the neighborhood you live in. You know, in some neighborhoods, it's not uncommon to see windows boarded or you know.
I think more
Bars on
importantly, you
windows.
just got to be aware of your surroundings, and I think that's the other thing too.
Yeah.
Just be aware, like you said, of your surroundings. If things look weird or awkward, be aware because we're there to protect each other.
The old
My
apartment
neighbors
complex
have
I lived in, there were people that lived 2 doors down from me that I would always hear them screaming at each other, and they would start screaming at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And finally,
Right.
I said something to the front desk like, "Hey,
Something's
you
wrong.
should just know that like something's going on in there. They're waking people up. There's a lot of us poking our heads out. Like, you might just want to toss a note on their door that says." Keep
Chill
it to
out.
yourself. Yeah, like don't do it in the hallway. So